Hey guys, Rebel Engine 95, recording for it live from your local county prison cell. First of all, I want to apologize for my voice. It's been like this all week. It's just been shit. So I just want to, if I ever start coughing or if I start, if I sound like this, it's because of that. It's just been changing, weather changing and all that. Um, but the second thing I want to talk about is, before I get into the fight, is the reason for this fight. There is a specific. I had this fight like 4 or 5 episodes later, but then I kind of realized that there might be a reason to do this now rather than later. And that's because I could essentially do it, save myself some time if this happens. But when they revealed the trailer, not the next episode, but when they revealed the trailer for season 7 of Death Battle, behind the letters you could see certain like characters and like scenes and everything that were supposed to are just random, or are they just saying like, hey, these are the characters in. I believe Miles Morales was in one of them, so Miles Morales is in the death battle. But we had, they had Danny that, and I thought, like, I was like, who is that? Is that Obi-Wan? I'm like, who are they going to put Obi-Wan against? So I started looking at they would put Obi-Wan against, and I saw a couple of fights, like Dumbledore and shit like that. And then I saw this one, and I looked into it, and it's absolutely perfect. And I hope they do it. The problem is, if they do it, then I have to, like, immediately, however many weeks from now, delete this episode. But I want to do this, and then find out that they're going to do it. This is Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Uther the Lightbringer from World of Warcraft. Quick disclaimer: I am not at all familiar with World of Warcraft. So he specialized in this throughout the younger part of his career. During his, before he became, the Jedi Master, and before he became, General Kenobi. And then later, after, during the Clone Wars or towards the end of Clone Wars, he became the master of Ceresu. Not just a master, not just, but like the leading master in the galaxy on the art form. It was, his skill was so great that it was said that he could walk through, in a full-scale war, walk through the crossfires of a full-scale war worth of blaster fire and just be unscathed, because he would be able to deflect, every shot that came his way. Fighting Grievous, he was able to actually block 18 lightsaber strikes, I believe, a second, which is insane. And again, he's fought against he's fought against some of the most powerful beings at that time in Star Wars canon, so, he's got a lot of experience, and he's just got a lot of ability. He also, there's a few specific Force tricks that we've seen him use, like, for instance, the displacement of energy, being, like, if somebody shoots Force Lightning, or if somebody in his case, he did it with fire, or, blaster fire even, he can kind of hold it in place and then just kind of disperse it. So, that's a thing he's been able to do. He utilizes force, acrobatics and force leaps and pushes and things like that into his fighting. So that's something that's more, he's more accustomed to. He's been shown to be able to crush things using the Force, but that's more of a droid technique. He's been able to throw his lightsaber and keep it on and, like, kind of guide it and boomerang it back to himself. I mean, a lot of people have done that, but that is something we've seen him do. So yeah, I mean, and then, later down the line, we know he becomes a ghost because he becomes one with the Force after being killed by Vader, but that's, I don't think they're gonna put that in. So yeah, there's just, a lot I could say about Obi-Wan, and also I could just brush it off and say, well, he's Obi-Wan, he's a Jedi, he's a Star Wars character, he's the same as half the others, but he really isn't. And I had to look all this up so I'd have something to talk about during this video. And then we move on to Uther. Now, Uther was a paladin during one of the Great Wars in the Warcraft timeline. And, fought alongside other paladins to fight, fighting the undead. And even though his role was as more of a healer, more of a supporting character, not character, but a supporting class, I should say, where he's, empowering their attacks, healing them, and, using the light to kill the undead. He would also rush right into combat. So, this is not a guy who just doesn't fight. This isn't, he's not Donnie. He is definitely a Leo. After that, though, after his role in the war, he did, kind of took to, he kind of, took sanctuary in the, not really sanctuary, but I don't know how else to describe it. Took sanctuary in the church and decided, I'm just gonna learn and master and teach the light, the ways of the light to the other people. And eventually he taught Arthas, the son of the king, who later would become king and then become the Lich King, who would kill Uther. But before that, Uther had many, tips, tricks up his sleeve that he would be able to use to, the light and the force interact in many similar ways, so I'm not gonna, so I'll get up with that in the end, but, his weapon of choice was always a warhammer, like a giant warhammer that, would crush people. I mean, it's a fucking hammer. And he also utilized this when implementing, the light, because he was able to, he was able to empower his allies and heal them. He was also able to do it to himself, so he was able to cover that hammer in kind of almost like an electrical kind of aura. He's also able to, shoot energy blasts. These all have names, but I forget what they're called. Then he's also able, he's been shown to create it's like a giant maelstrom of divine energy. I think it's called Divine Hurricane. And it also has glowy hammers in it for some reason, which is awesome. And then his last ability, which is probably the most problematic for this video, is his Unyielding Spirit. It has a name, so it is an actual ability, where after his physical body dies, before he becomes one with the light, if that sounds familiar, he becomes an astral form of himself, who, though lacking a physical presence or form, his, light-based abilities are, are magnified multiple times. So, that blast becomes a giant blast. The healing becomes even greater, though he's going to die anyway, so it doesn't matter. And the, Divine Hurricane becomes, huge. But it only lasts for so long before he eventually, moves on and becomes one with the light. So, how would this fight go? First of all, I want to say that this is the kind of death battle I love, where it's two different characters. These are not just carbon copies of each other. These are not, one's not ripping the other off or anything. These are not, by any means, the same character. They are very different and very clearly different, and their worlds are incredibly different. But then you look at them, and you look at the parallels, and you look at the perfect, things that just happen to align with them, and you're like, this is amazing. This is why I want to see Joker Giorno. This is why Wolverine Raiden was one of my favorites. The characters that should have nothing in common, but have so much in common. They were both these great generals who, mastered this, the light side of, again, the Force and the light being very similar in concept, interacting very differently, but being very similar in concept. Mastering the light, teaching a young pupil who's supposed to be the destined leader, who then turns to the darkness and ends up slaying them in the end. It's just amazing. So, who do I think would win this? Before I get to that answer, I'm gonna break this down. I know I keep cucking everyone out of this, but I want to say that definitely Obi-Wan has the physical advantage. Not only the lightsaber being just a more advanced piece of weaponry than that hammer is. But also just, again, being the master of Suresu that he is, whereas Uther fought for many years and is definitely able to fight, but he's not master ranked. there are master swordsmen and master, master fighters in Warcraft, and he is not one of them. That's not saying anything against him. He just chose to master a different style. So physically, Obi-Wan has a phenomenal advantage. If I took the Force away and took the light away, Obi-Wan would take this no problem. That being said, adding the Force and the light, Uther has an advantage in terms of power, because the light definitely has just more powerful abilities than the Force does. However, the light has more limitations than the Force does. Uther's only able to do these things so often. He has limitations because he has to pray in a lot of these cases for things like healing. So a lot of these abilities that he uses come with drawbacks or just limitation of how often or to what extent they can be used, whereas the Force is only really limited by its user. You can keep using the Force over and over and over, so long as you're capable of doing it. The other issue with that is that adding the Force into this situation increases Obi-Wan's, not only his abilities in terms of being able to combat the light, but also in his regular, combat, in his physical advantage, because now he's able to utilize things like Force leaps, Force acrobatics, Force pushes. Like I said, he's able to throw his lightsaber and all of that. That advantage lets him, becomes further magnified. So, though I can get into the nitty-gritty of it, again, I think the lightsaber would cut the hammer, but an empowered hammer might be able to duel with a lightsaber. Obi-Wan would be able to deflect or compress the energy blast. Divine Hurricane, I think, would probably wound Obi-Wan, but I don't think it would kill him. It's not meant to. And the astral form, if they, the Unyielding Spirit, I don't even know if they'd keep that in, because that is after he dies, his being becomes. So how would I do this? I would say that Obi-Wan's advantage versus Uther's advantage is much more consistent and is probably to a greater degree. The light has more power, undisputedly, than the Force, but not so much more power that it's like a snap of his fingers would kill him. Right? Whereas Obi-Wan's physical advantage over Uther, I'd say, is much greater, with especially with the addition of the Force, and also it's much more consistent. Because the Force just doesn't have those same limitations that the light does. So I would say that Obi-Wan Kenobi probably takes this. I'd like to think that if they did put the Unyielding Spirit in, it'd be a little unfair to give that to him and not give the same pretty much ability to Obi-Wan, where he can become one with the Force after being killed. But I'd like to think that he'd throw his hammer down and be like, "Strike me down and I'll become more powerful than you can imagine." And he's like, "Oh shit, I know where this is going." But yeah, I'd say Obi-Wan probably takes this fight. Like I said, more consistent advantage. So anyway, we'll see in the next month or two if this fight actually happens. But if this happens and I end up deleting this video, I'm going to be a little pissed, but I'm going to be happy that I called it and that I got this out before it. So anyway, Verbal Engine 95.